This podcast is being recorded on Kaurna land. We honour and celebrate the strong cultural traditions of motherhood, family and connection to country. No woman can say motherhood hasn't changed her, but every mother's story is different.
My daughter was down for a sleep and I pick my phone up, I ring my mum and I just say, hey mum, if you could have a hysterectomy and I could have your uterus, would you do it? And she said yes.
This is how motherhood changed me. I am Kerry Turner.
And I'm Jenna Yates. Today's guest, Kez, has an incredible story. She's a mum of two, and it's how her second baby came to be here that we find absolutely mind-blowing. It's a fertility story like no other.
It really is. I was researching for today thinking, oh my gosh, we have got so much to cover off.
She's Australia's first uterus transplant recipient. Whoa, a big hello, Kirsty Bryant.
Hello.
Hi ladies. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Let's jump straight into it, Kirsty. As we start every episode, can we get one word from you to describe the woman you were before you were a mum?
Yes. I have listened to many episodes and I am finding it so hard to just grab one word. But I'd like to say I was probably a bit type A.
Oh, we haven't had one like that before. That's a good description.
You know what's so weird with that first question thing? I feel like I'm like, yep, I relate. So I get what you mean. It's hard to find one word because basically everyone's first word I'm like, so was I.
Yeah. Oh, that was me too. Oh, I didn't think of that one.
All right, Kirsty, let's go back to 2021, was it? Your first pregnancy, your husband Nick and you're expecting. Tell us about how the pregnancy was.
Yeah, so we had fallen pregnant pretty easy. We had been trying, we'd just gotten married and our honeymoon was cancelled thanks to COVID. And I sort of said, well, if we're not going on honeymoon, what are we going to do? And we decided to start trying for a baby.
How exciting.
I know.
And did the pregnancy go well?
Yes. So Violet was a pretty much textbook pregnancy. I was accepted into the MGP program, so the midwifery group practice with our local hospital. I was seeing my wonderful GP and Violet, I went into labour like a couple of days prior to Violet's due date, and Violet was ultimately born via emergency caesarean a day prior to her due date.
Wow.
Do you remember much from that day, the delivery day?
Yeah, so Violet was posterior, so we were spine to spine, and I was having lots of back pain, and labour was hard. It was really hard. I ended up having an epidural, and I pushed for quite some time, but instead of Violet tucking her chin to her chest and coming out with the tip of her head, she flexed her head and was coming out eyeballs first.
Oh, whoa.
So unfortunately, really the opposite of what she was saying. She was very lost. She didn't know where she was going. And we were unable to have any assistance in getting her out because of her eyeball presentation. Yeah. So that's when it was decided to go for a caesarean section. And this was COVID time, so 2021, and it was a weekend. It was now midnight, and unfortunately, so Violet was delivered. I got to have her on my chest. My husband's by my side. Everything's going as best as it could. My midwife and my husband took Violet away. And as they were suturing me up and finishing the caesarean section, that's when I had a postpartum hemorrhage of 11 litres. So a massive postpartum hemorrhage.
Oh my goodness.
Twice my body's volume of blood over.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Oh, wow. That's so much blood.
And so the time that it was, and the I don't know, at weekend, is it like the main people are away, or what was the staffing situation like for you? Because that's a serious thing that they need to swoop in and take care of you there.
Yeah. So I was awake for all of this. So Violet was born at 1 a.m. and over the next few hours, I'm hearing lots of little, portable phones. People are getting called back in. People are calling in their heads of departments and things. And, in the beginning, they were hoping to take me to CT to get a scan and find out the source of the bleed. But unfortunately, by 3 a.m., it was decided that it would unfortunately, it just wouldn't be able to be happened. It wouldn't be able to happen. I wasn't going to be able to be moved.
They needed to save your life
by this stage.
Yeah,
correct. So they decided that they did a life-saving hysterectomy. So they removed my uterus to stop that bleeding to save my life.
Did they communicate it to you? I'm just trying to fathom.
Does that just happen because it has to happen, or do you know it's about to happen?
I was awake, so I could hear everything happening around me. I knew it was an emergency. I was coming in and out of consciousness because of the blood loss. And it does make you a little bit panicky. But I did have a nurse by my side holding my hand, and the obstetrician popped his head over and said, we're going to do a life-saving hysterectomy. And I said no. And I was begging for my mum and asking for my husband.
I was just about to say, Nick wouldn't have been in the room with you because he's gone off with the midwife and baby Violet. Oh.
And also because it was such an emergency, they were communicating but very small amounts of information. And this being my husband's first baby, he didn't really understand. He just assumed that everything was okay. And they did communicate that I'd had a bleed and that I wasn't going to come down just yet. But he also didn't understand. He just assumed, well, she's okay. Everything's fine. So it wasn't until sort of very early hours of the morning, one of the obstetricians came down and saw my husband, Nicholas, in he didn't even have a room yet. They were in where they bathed the babies. And one of my midwives was still there with him, doing a bit of finger feeding with Nick and the baby. And that's when they said to him, we need you to get your parents and Kirsty's parents to the hospital as soon as possible. There's been an emergency and Kirsty's had a postpartum hemorrhage. But even all those words, he wasn't really understanding what was going on. It wasn't until all of our family got there and they really put everyone in a room and explained what had happened. I think that's when my husband went, oh my goodness, I almost lost my life.
So Kirsty, your emergency hysterectomy obviously means you're told you're never going to carry another child. How do you...
Yeah, so I understood that.
That's a lot.
Very, very clearly.
Yeah.
But also by that stage, it's 3 a.m. I'm exhausted. I've been in labour all day. I said, put me to sleep. And they said, yep, we're going to do that. They put the oxygen mask over your face and I go off to sleep. And then I'm put in an induced coma for 48 hours to let my body heal and recover after that blood loss.
Far out. I was thinking when you were talking, you were in the midwifery group practice, and a lot of us, for me at least, I don't want to speak to your experience, but I mean, a cesarean for me would have been the final, the last thing. But you will do anything as a mother to make sure that your baby is born safely. So I completely appreciate that process. But then when it's okay, well, we're going to do this for you, I would have fought it too, Kirsty, because it would be well, wait, I'm not done having children. And it feels so final.
I was 28. Yeah, 28. I was 28 at this stage, very newly married. Had just carried this very much wanted pregnancy. Like, yeah, it was a massive, massive shock. So when I awoke sort of 48 hours later, you know, everyone's coming and visiting me, like all the doctors and the nurses, and one of the midwives, I think it was the nurse unit manager, came in and she said, you know, do you understand? And I said, yeah, I don't have a uterus anymore. I do still have my my ovaries, so I can have biological children. But I also think with that level of trauma, I was very much still, I was fawning a lot. I was trying to act very cool and calm, because, you know, with all those layers of trauma in my head, I think I thought worst case scenario, I was like, I don't want to have them take away my baby. I want to show that I'm a very competent parent. Like, I just want, because I had to stay in hospital for 10 days afterwards. Like, I just wanted to get well as quick as possible and get the hell out of there.
And you're in an induced coma for 48 hours. So little baby Violet,
I know,
didn't get to have those crucial early hours and days with mum.
So they tried, I mean, my midwives, because they knew my wishes about wanting to breastfeed, they had been milking me while I was in the ICU to help encourage my milk come through. When you have a hemorrhage, it delays your milk anyway.
Of course.
But because I had it so severely and I'd had a really big surgery and I had been asleep, like all of these factors, they were worried about delaying my milk. I had done some expressing and collected some colostrum. So Violet's first feeds were colostrum, and my husband was able to finger feed her those. But yeah, she was put on formula, and they did, and because I had all the tubes, you know, there's a tube in your throat, and like there's just tubes, and I had a line in my neck, and they did, the incredible midwives and the ICU nurses had been getting Nick to bring Violet up, and they had been sort of clearing off some space on my chest and doing a little bit of skin to skin. But they were also very aware that I needed to recover, and they just wanted to sort of do the best for both of us, you know, allow enough time for me to recover, but also get that bonding time with my baby.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about trauma. There's a lot you have to work out there and work through, and I'm sure it was a lengthy process before you even came to learn about getting a uterus transplant. I mean, I don't want to skip ahead, but I'm sure that just sort of blew your mind in another level.
How does that discussion happen? How do you discover that's a thing?
Well, truthfully, so once I got home, we started like immediately, like as soon as we were home. You know, I was very, very grateful to have my daughter, but I also, my wishes were to have more children, and I just felt that invisible clock. So I started doing research. I jumped on a few groups on Facebook. I found a trauma association group. I also found a hysterectomies group. The hysterectomies group wasn't really obviously geared towards
emergency,
so not a 28-year-old.
No.
You brought the average age right down.
Yeah. But I think I was just looking for someone and looking for a community, because I just didn't even realize, like, I had done so much preparing for my birth and for Violet's birth and, you know, my pregnancy. I'd done hypnobirthing. I'd read the books. I was listening to podcasts. You know, I thought I knew all the things, but I had never heard of someone having, like, and to me, a postpartum hemorrhage was, you get back to the ward, you know, you're holding your baby, and then there's a gush of blood, and they go, oh, this is an emergency. I didn't realize it could, you know, I didn't even leave, you know, the operating theatre, and it was this, you know, massive emergency. So
So you didn't even make it. You didn't even make it into recovery, Kirsty. You were still in theatre.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily,
wow.
because it was such an emergency. I think if I had been moved, it could have been worse.
Yeah, exactly. So you've gone home, you're researching and trying to figure it out because you're like, I'm not done yet. And then you come across
a uterus transplant.
An option. Uterus transplants, like, sorry, what?
Yeah. And how do you then go about finding a uterus that no one needs anymore?
So I had found the clinical trial that was happening at the Royal Women's, and I was on the website. I could tell the website was a little bit old. It hadn't been updated. But I read the ethics the ethics of the clinical trial, and I read the requirements to be eligible. I was the right height, weight, so it goes on BMI. I also, one of the requirements was to have embryos made, which we hadn't done yet. Okay. But one of the requirements was to bring a donor with you to the clinical trial. So once I'd seen that, I immediately, my daughter was down for a sleep, and I picked my phone up, I ring my mum, and I just say, hey, mum, if you could have a hysterectomy and I could have your uterus, would you do it? And she said yes, like immediately on the spot over the phone.
What a mum. What a mum. If it means more grandchildren, absolutely.
Well, that's exactly right. But the part of my brain's ticking away going, wait, this is the uterus that grew you.
Yes.
And now it's going to go inside of you and hopefully help you have another baby. I mean, like, wow, talk about science being so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And women's bodies being so cool.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Had you been told, Kirsty, that there might be a greater chance of success by it being your mum's uterus?
Great question.
So in the beginning, I did a lot of research. So I found that we were following the protocol from Sweden. So originally this Swedish doctor about 10 years ago came up with the protocol. He did the animal studies and then they had been doing it in Sweden. It had also been done in a few other countries. I could see China, America, but the clinical trial in Australia at the Royal Women's, we followed the protocol from Dr. Mats Brandström, so that original professor from Sweden. Mm-hmm. He actually did my surgery, and I had read some of the outcomes and saw that they had done mother and daughter and sisters, and also non-related donors. And then just in my general research, I had seen, like, obviously other body parts being donated by family members. The only thing with any sort of donation is you need to be a blood match, but you also need to be a tissue match, a tissue type match. Okay. And that was things that I didn't know. So I did know Mum and I had given blood together before, and I knew we were both A positive. But obviously, just because we're blood match doesn't mean, and we're mother-daughter doesn't necessarily mean we would be a tissue match. So that was a part of the tests that we were to undergo before we were accepted into the program.
I just can't believe that you rang your mum and said, hey, mum, can I have your uterus? Like, you must have
a very good... at the time. Yeah.
You must have a good relationship, though. I don't know that would be the first person that would cross my mind. Hey, mum.
Well, your mum will do anything for you, Kez.
I know, but
I would ring my mum.
Would you ring and say?
And she would do it. I know she would.
Can I have your uterus?
Yeah. But
such a bizarre conversation.
A little bit of context is my family had previously been through some medical. My brother had cancer. My younger brother, so it's just me and my brother, we're 18 months apart. And when he was 25, he had testicular cancer. He had a really rare, aggressive type of testicular cancer. And he had been through 3 months of chemotherapy, surgeries, and then he was recovering. And then 6 months later, he got a second type of cancer, and then had to have more surgeries. And now, touch wood, he's doing really well. Amazing. And he had 3 children. He's happy and healthy. But that, in context, like, we had been through that maybe 2 or 3 years prior. And I remember when my brother was going through chemo and we were all looking after each other, I remember just thinking, as his sister, I would do anything for him. If I could have taken away his cancer and put myself in his shoes, you know, I would have. And the way, you know, my mum took time off work, my dad took time off work when my brother was unwell. I took time off work. My brother couldn't drive. He had a young baby at the time and a new partner, like a wife. You know, it was just this really scary unknown. But as a family, we rallied together. And I felt, you know, after what had happened to me, it didn't feel as scary to ask, because a lot of people were like, I can't believe you didn't even preface your mum with any information. You just rang her one day out of the blue and asked that question.
Didn't even meet her for a coffee. Yes. You just blurted it out over the phone.
And then when it comes to transplant day, and I feel like
did you have to travel to Sweden for this, or did?
No, Sydney. So Dr. Mats Brandstrom came to us and brought his beautiful, amazing instruments and his team. He had other surgeons with him, and they filmed our surgery to then go on and help train other doctors.
I mean, it just feels like all of the planets aligned, so to speak, and it was, you know, it was meant to be. And then you've got this bizarre but exciting, maybe slightly scary mother-daughter date in the hospital. Like, okay.
And this was my mum's first operation. She'd never had an operation before.
Mum,
and even giving birth to us, myself and my brother, she had done that vaginally with like not very much assistance. So mum was really nervous and I felt terrified, but I was trying to put on a brave face because I wanted to be like, Mum, you are so okay. Like, you are so brave. Like, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. You don't have to give me Christmas presents ever again.
But Kirsty, you know, I've understood that with, like, say, a kidney transplant or something like that, they say it's harder on the donor than it is on the receiver. And maybe that's a situation where that person's unwell and they really need that and it improves them quite quickly. Was it similar to this? I mean, your mum wasn't really using the uterus anymore.
Yes, so you're correct. So it is, the surgery on the donor is longer and more strenuous than it is on the recipient. Yeah. So I was receiving the uterus. So mum's surgery went first. So we were basically side by side. So mum's surgery goes first. They put mum to sleep. They do a hysterectomy. But when you're doing a hysterectomy, you don't normally have to take all of the veins and like the blood source. They're trying to keep this organ alive, so they had to do all that very intricately. So mum's surgery was like 8 or 9 hours, whereas my surgery was, 5 or 6 hours. So as soon as the uterus was out and flushed and looking healthy and perfusing well, they then put me under the general anaesthetic and started operating on me. And then we both woke up in recovery opposite each other, basically.
Wow. We've spoken about the mental load of motherhood a bit, Kez, and I know all you mums will get me when I say I just want to get everything out of my brain so it's there for someone else to pick up when I need.
There is so much life admin as a mum, and even just thinking about delegating some of that only adds to my mental load. I need to clone myself, Jen.
Well, Wishkeeper is an even better solution. It's an online platform that helps you collect and centralise all those important documents, keeping everything secure and in the one place. You can also create a plan for any of life's unexpected events through to documenting your final wishes. And as a mum of 3 little boys, that brings a lot of peace of mind.
It's so easy to navigate because the last thing we need is another thing to do. But Wishkeeper has really nailed it, even for a tech-challenged and overwhelmed mum like me. I love that there are 2 sections, one for the here and now stuff that I've shared with my husband, and another for after I'm gone.
You can choose who can see your information, when they can see it, and how much they can see, and update it at any time.
Right now, you can take advantage of a free trial at wishkeeper.com.au.
Wishkeeper, your story, your life, your wishes.
That surgery was January 2023, right?
Correct.
May that year. Tell us what happened.
You'd waste no time, Kirsty.
30 days after the uterus transplant, 32 days, I get a period. And then 3 months from when I get my period, we schedule an embryo transfer. So my husband and I, prior to the uterus transplant, had made embryos, and we had 6 in the freezer.
Love it.
We travel down to Sydney. I meet my doctors. I get to see the lovely embryologists, the scientists. They basically use like a really big, long turkey baster, like anyone going through IVF treatment. And they pop that into mum's uterus, and they're using an ultrasound and keeping an eye on everything. And one of our embryos is transferred, and we're told, do not do any wee tests. Just wait until you have your blood test. We will contact you in, I can't remember if it was 10 or 14 days. But of course, I didn't listen. And I started doing my own tests at home, doing a wee test like every morning and night. And it was maybe around like day 7 mark, I started seeing that faint line.
Oh my gosh. I can just imagine the phone calls to mum then, even back when the period come. Mum, we've got a period.
Well, even funnier, because we were still staying in Sydney with our recovery. So mum, my dad and I were all living together in a little unit. And I actually burst out of the bathroom and was like, I've got my period.
like
my mum and dad
13.
are like, yeah, exactly. It was like,
my God.
Like, it was like a time warp, and I was back being a teenager again. And they both went, oh, that's good. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Too much information. Oh my gosh.
Our family we don't have that rule. No, we all talk about all of our different, there's no TMI in my family.
I love it.
So we know that your pregnancy with Violet was fairly textbook. What about this second time around with baby number 2?
So I was looked after really, really well by the Royal Women's and all the different specialists. So physically, it felt very similar. I had a little bit of morning sickness like I did with my daughter, but that sort of went away by itself. And I was being monitored. So every 2 weeks, I was having an ultrasound. So this baby was like, we got to see every moment of my pregnancy with Henry. And it all went really, really well. I did get gestational diabetes due to the medication I was on. So I was taking steroids for the uterus transplant, and I did get steroid-induced gestational diabetes. But that was really looked after really well. I did end up using like insulin needles, and I was injecting overnight to help my numbers in the morning. But it all went really, really well. We were obviously really, really worried about complications like going into labour early and like preeclampsia because of all the drugs that I was on and just the risk to the baby with the uterus transplant. But touch wood, I got to carry Henry for 37 weeks. So he was
Well done.
37 weeks to the day. He was booked in for that date, and it was so exciting I made it to that date, because that was obviously like a really big milestone.
Huge.
To making sure that he was cooked nice and healthy, and he got as long as he needed in there and as long as my body could take.
Did you feel once you had Henry in your arms that your family was complete?
So I'll backtrack a little bit. I was really lucky. I got to have mum in the operating theatre. So I had my husband next to me for the cesarean. I had my mum in there with me. I had all of my beautiful doctors. I had Dr. Jana Pittman. She was taking photos and videos. Dr. Max Brandstrom came back and was there the day that Henry was born. So he got to see, this beautiful journey of my no uterus, and now baby. And it was just beautiful. And I was sitting in recovery and with Henry in my arms and my husband on one side and my parents on the other side. And mum, looked at my dad and looked at Nick and just said, "That was beautiful. She's going to want to go again." And I was like, that was such a beautiful experience. Like that, it was just magical. Like I honestly, I love to talk, but I can't find the words to explain how beautiful it was to see my son lifted out of my belly and passed over the
Kirsty,
curtain
and so
have
different.
everyone in that room so happy.
Well, so different to that first experience of becoming a mum.
I've got goosebumps because I can imagine it was actually quite a healing process for you too.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel that it was sort of, because I was very nervous leading up to, obviously, to the cesarean. And I think I had kind of was ignoring that fact that I was going to have another cesarean. But it was beautiful. And all of our family went down to Sydney. So my husband's parents were in Sydney with us. My parents were there. My husband's brother and sister were there as well. My daughter got brought up to the hospital like a couple of hours later. It was it was a celebration. It just felt like this really happy, momentous day, and days afterwards, compared to, the last time, which was a little bit more, a little bit sadder,
Yeah. I'm fascinated to ask, what's the bond like between Henry and your mum?
Oh, so special. I mean, we're so lucky. I'm incredibly lucky. I've been so supported by my friends and family through this journey, and to be able to go through the uterus transplant with my mum by my side has just been incredible. And she's not just my mum, she really is my best friend. And I don't think I could have done it without her, with everything that had happened prior, because I was a little bit scared of trying to have another baby. And I'm just so glad that, my mum's doing really well and she recovered really well. She did have some hiccups along the way, and, that was hard because I felt guilty. But, my son's now 1, and, seeing her holding him on his birthday and just sharing those milestones with us is just so special.
Oh, I mean, I'm so blown away. But to circle back to Kerry's question about whether you knew you were done or not, Henry's just turned 1. You sort of almost marked that occasion with almost the final part of the journey. If you can talk us through your decision and how you ultimately came to decide that was it for you.
So, unfortunately, a few months after Henry was born, I started having some bleeding, and originally we thought it had to do with my period, and then we were sort of investigating a few other things. While you have a uterus transplant, you're having really regular biopsies as well. So they take tissue and put it under a microscope and make sure that you're not in organ rejection. And unfortunately, after a few investigations and biopsies, it was found that I was in organ rejection. So that hadn't happened previously to Henry's pregnancy. So we did try and treat it a few times, but it was making me incredibly unwell. And then it was sort of, it was, always sort of, because I hadn't made that decision with Henry's birth. It was then decided that I would have a second hysterectomy, which I have had. Now I'm not going to carry any more babies.
Oh, you know, I wonder, Kirsty, I don't know whether for many of us we ever feel done, no matter what we've been through. I certainly don't feel done, although my husband tells me we are. and yours probably seems quite final, but maybe it doesn't ever go away for a lot of us.
But I have to ask, is it final? You had embryos in the freezer. Do you still have those embryos, Kirsty?
Yes. So I totally agree. Listening to other women on your podcast, I think that's something that I'm really slowly coming to terms to, that perhaps none of us ever, some people do, but, for a majority of women and some men and parents, that maybe sometimes we don't ever sort of 100% feel done. But I'm just so grateful that I have the two children that I have. Violet and Henry have such a beautiful relationship. I'm fit and healthy to the best of my abilities. Amazing. Mum's fit and healthy. I want to see my beautiful children grow up and, I just really want to embrace that for maybe the next couple of years. But I do have more embryos in the freezer.
I know how this works.
Never say never. And look, we've already done these two vastly different ways of bringing children into the world.
Absolutely.
What would be, a third? We could always go down another path of surrogacy or something maybe along the way. So, my husband, if he's listening to this, I'm sure he's rolling his eyes, but
we're not having that conversation.
Maybe not yet.
Henry's only one. I mean, give it time.
Yeah. But my brother's got 3 kids, and I love how chaotic their life is. And I mean, our life is absolute mayhem. And that's why I love having children. I love a busy, loud household, and we have just had Christmas, and that was just so beautiful to share Christmas with my kids, and seeing the delight, and then having a busy Christmas day with all the cousins and stuff like that. But for now it's just the two, and we'll just see where that takes us.
Kirsty,
where life takes us.
What an absolute journey. Incredible. I mean, talk about determination, and when there's a will, there's a way. I mean, I'm just so blown away by you. But also I want to say, you've got this Instagram page, and you're so open, and you share these moments, and it's almost like a diary entry. It's really fascinating to read, but I'm sure you've been part of this pioneering of this incredibly new, exciting science, and this must bring so much hope to so many people all over the world.
Yeah, science and medicine is incredible. And I get lots of messages from women who have had postpartum hemorrhages like myself, but also, a uterus transplant can be for, someone like me that has had their uterus removed, whether that was from, postpartum hemorrhage or from cancer treatment, but also for women born without a uterus, with MRKH. I just feel incredibly lucky that I've been able to be a part of this clinical trial, and then also share my experience. Because, if those women in Sweden didn't put their hands up and go through their medical journey, over the past 10 years, I wouldn't be here now with my son, Henry. And I'm just so thankful that I've had the support from the Royal Women's, the support from my mum, and my friends and family. And I just can't imagine, you know, maybe in the future, Violet may need some reproductive help. And I just can't imagine what science will be doing, you know, in 10, 15 years' time.
It's incredible.
And in the meantime, Violet will be the only one in your household that has a period. Won't she?
Yes. I've said that to my husband too. And I'm like, imagine when she's a teenager and and
you'll be like,
but she's got
I don't have to deal with that anymore. Life's good.
Yeah.
Oh, it did annoy me when my period came back after, because I sort of had mine all back to back to back, and it was like, oh, are you telling me this is it for like how long do I have to, like, it's just, it really is annoying on the other side of it, isn't it?
It's 100%
Being
annoying.
a woman is just, I know, it's just not fair.
It's one thing after another.
Kirsty, it is like the most insane, incredible story. How has it shaped who you are as a mum? And like, I know you said you look at little Henry, and like, I'm not kidding, I've had goosebumps for like 90% of this chat, because
I can't believe I didn't cry.
like, you must look at this kid and like, of course you were meant to be here, Henry. But like, I mean, how has it made you the mum you are?
I think before being a parent, like I said, I was very type A. I was a very busy person. I would say I was an anxious person, but I think after having Violet and Henry, it's put a lot of things in perspective, and I feel much more at ease. I honestly just take things day by day, and you know, I don't stress the small stuff anymore. And I think I don't know if that's, you know, partly growing up and growing older, but also being a parent, you realize, you know, there's so many, you know, there's always going to be a next battle. So I really just try and take things day by day and stay positive as much as I can.
I was going to ask you, Kirsty, for a word to describe the woman you are now that you are a mum. Do we put that at ease? I know it's 2 words.
I think if I was to describe the woman I am now, I would say resilient.
Oh, I would agree with that, having heard that story.
I just, honestly, I mean,
well done, doctors.
Henry,
what a
do
special
you know what I've gone through? I mean, it's just so cool. It's so cool.
To one day explain that you grew in the same uterus that Mum grew in.
Yep, and his Uncle Joel. Yep.
It just, It's
a family heirloom.
I can't imagine all the cool photos you guys have.
Yeah, and we all have matching scars. So Mum and I have, you know, belly button to pubic bone matching scars.
You know,
very
Kirsty,
trendy.
Kerry and I, you just mentioned we've just gone past Christmas. We both had a conversation. Kerry shared something on our social media about in the past having felt insecure going to the beach, and you know, you just realise, just do it. It's so fun. The kids love it. There's a greater appreciation for your body, I'm sure, after everything you've gone through, and that scar. I mean, oh my God, I bet you're so proud of it.
Yeah, especially my daughter. So she's almost 4. Whenever she sees my belly, she always points and she's like, that's where Henry and I came from. And I was like, yep, darling, that's where you and Henry came from. And like, it makes me so proud of the sacrifices that I made to bring my children, to get my children here and to make my family. I mean, carrying a baby doesn't make you any more of a parent, but that's just part of my journey to motherhood. And I'm really proud of what my body did for me.
And that every scar tells such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Oh, Kirsty, we are so bloody honoured that you came on to share your story and like so glad to have made friends with you online. It's so cool. So thank you so much.
No, I love the real stuff. I love the real life sharing. I love seeing, you guys are great. I love your community. I love the stories that you bring. There was a few that, you know, really pulled on my heartstrings, the secondary infertility. Tara's chat about you guys are great. I love it. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my journey to motherhood as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on How Motherhood Changed Me. We'd love you to be part of the conversation by connecting with us on social media. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review and subscribe.